Hello everyone, welcome back to my review of Boom. This is going to be my unedited thoughts on that episode, and wow, something so simple about that episode, yet there's so much for me to say. I'm just going to come out right and say it. Stephen Moffat, you magic man, you've not lost your touch, have you? My god, that's the most emotional, genuinely emotional I've ever felt towards a Doctor episode, or at least in a very, very long time. The premise is incredibly simple. The Doctor arrives on this planet that's seemingly at war and steps on a landmine. And that's literally the premise, is he's stuck on this landmine and he's having to figure out a way off of it. All the while, something's going wrong with this conflict. Essentially, it's looking like, we can't really see who they're supposed to be fighting, and there's a sort of machine ambulance that's terrorizing them on the loose. So something I thought was really cool about this right off the bat is the references. I mean, the fact that the technology used in this war turns out to be from Villengard, which, if you remember, is a long-term Doctor Who tradition of where everyone in the universe gets their weapons from. Famously, Captain Jack got his weapons from there. One thing I want to point out immediately, Verada Sethu's there in in a different role to what we would have assumed to see her in, called Monday something, because the Doctor makes a joke about Sunday Monday, which was funny. Um, the Doctor in this episode, I think this was the Ncuti Gatwa showcase for me. This is the one where he really cemented himself as the Doctor for me. He had so many lines. Not that I didn't think he was the Doctor before, but I think this was the one that made me go, yeah, that guy is the Doctor. That guy talks like the Doctor, walks like the Doctor, whilst also having his own fresh energy. There's something about Moffat's Doctor dialogue that's just so incredibly perfect. When he's talking about, okay, so spoilers, I'm just going to get right into the basic plot. So it turns out what they're fighting doesn't exist. And essentially, the machines of Villengard are basically keeping killing them so that they keep buying weapons from them, despite there actually being no real threat. A really, really, really cool twist, simple concept, and their blind faith and religion is basically keeping them from questioning it. All the while, you have this guy who dies in the opening, who turns out to be someone's dad, and he gets murdered in the cold open, and his daughter comes to where they're buried essentially, and the Doctor has got a hold of his, I guess, space urn, but he's only holding it so that the bomb doesn't go off to counterbalance his weight. So there's these moments where she's trying to console her dad, trying to see her dad, and obviously if she does, the Doctor will move around, bomb goes off, and the dad is uploaded to an AI post-death. And yeah, so essentially the dad goes inside the AI system and rejigs some things, and that's like the conclusion. But that's not what shocked me the most about this. We have almost two deaths in this. We have the one of a soldier character who kind of fancies Verada's character, who isn't the companion yet. I'm wondering how that ties in. Is that like a Clara Oswald type of deal where like she appears at random points in history before eventually becoming a fully fledged companion? I'm not sure, but he basically gets killed trying to rewire the machines, and it's a really heartbreaking moment where she's just about to confess her love to him, and he dies. He dies on the spot immediately. One thing I want to say, visually, this episode is fantastic. Um, some of the dialogue Ncuti gives me very Capaldi vibes, and it makes sense given Stephen Moffat wrote it. Stuff about how war is good for business and business is booming. Just simple lines like that. Just that's the Doctor to me. That's the Doctor, and things like when Monday says, "Oh, I thought you didn't believe in faith, Doctor," and he says, "I might not have to like it, but sometimes I need it." Really, really nice. So the big thing I'm kind of dancing around is Ruby actually gets shot. She is attempting to shoot Verada's character so that the evil ambulance machines go away from the Doctor and onto her. And it's kind of like, oh, you shoot me so it gets away from the Doctor. But then Loverboy sees that, comes in and goes, no, you're going to shoot my woman. And Ruby gets killed, essentially, and we get that reprise of the snow, and everything freezes around us, and yeah, no idea what's going on with the snow still. The fact that she was kind of revived made sense to me, because obviously it's space age technology. I wonder if there was something higher keeping her alive. Obviously, Susan Twist is the character on the computer ambulance thing that's run by Villain Guard, so what that means for the future, I'm not sure. It's definitely presenting her in a more villainous light than we've seen previously. Previous to this, she was basically just a background character, being involved in rather menial things. This time she is pretty much framed as the antagonist, so I'm wondering if that's hinting towards a more antagonistic role for her in the future. I'm trying to get all my thoughts out. Yeah, it was very good. It was very good. Very emotional, as I said, genuinely the most emotional I've felt towards Doctor Who in a while. The whole through line of the dad basically being an AI, but still trying to protect his daughter, that fatherly love making it through to him, lovely. The commentary on AI and the usage of it, not only as eventually it's going to become somewhat human sentient, but also the idea of using it as a replacement for people and basically seeing people as numbers in a machine, I thought was really, really effective commentary on things we've seen recently with AI. But it also feels so unique that you don't even register it as that almost. You register it as, oh, this is just something that's part of this world. One thing I will have a complaint about, and it's something I have mentioned before, the Doctor says, oh, Ruby, this is your first time. And we do admittedly get a really nice scene of Ruby looking up at the stars for the first time in outer space, and that would be fine, except for the fact that we've seen in Devil's Court, they've apparently been traveling 6 months. I really don't understand why that line's in there. They could have just cut it out and it would have made sense. Maybe it'll have a justification in the series that I'm not yet aware of, but at present, it just feels like it confuses their whole dynamic, because these couple of episodes still feel very early on. So for there to randomly be a 6-month time jump for Devil's Court feels so odd, because even in this one, the tragedy of Ruby dying, because the Doctor, for most of this episode, or at least half of it, thinks Ruby's died, and the tragedy of that is they barely knew each other, and she's already dead, and the Doctor has already basically let her die almost, and that's the tragedy of it. So I think that's kind of undercut by the 6-month thing. Do you know what I mean? I think there's some muddling there, which I'm not keen on. Otherwise, though, that's not even really a fault of this episode so much as it is a fault of the series as a whole. But yeah, no, this was a fantastic episode. I thought the setting was really cool. Castarion 3 was one of those really unique sort of planet vistas. I believe this is the first time they've used that volume equipment that things like The Mandalorian use, and by God, it shows. Obviously, CGI experts might be able to look at some of it and go, oh, that doesn't look quite right. To me, this is one of the best looking Doctor episodes to date. I think it looks fantastic. I think it really shows the benefit of a simple, effective premise. Everything felt like it built organically on top of each other. This is probably, dare I say, maybe joint first in RTD2 so far, maybe even surpassing Wobbly Yonder. I do still love that one. I think if you're used to faster paced Doctor Who, as the first 2 episodes are, this one, might come into you as a bit of shock. I think actually Stephen Moffat even said that. For me, this was what we needed. The slowing down, the rising of kind of tension, because obviously the first 2 episodes are very light, and, the characters don't really feel like they're in much danger. And Ruby literally almost dies, 3 trips in. That, to me, is a sufficient, building of the stakes. And obviously, we get a trailer for 73 yards in this, and that seems to be continuing along that trend. And I think this has really put the series, in my view, in very good stead. Obviously, I enjoyed Devil's Court. This is by far my favourite of the series, though, and Space Babies is decent. So right now, I've enjoyed all the episodes to varying degrees. Obviously, you guys might disagree on that, but for me, this one was fantastic. We get some really lovely references to particularly Moffat's previous Doctor Who work. Obviously, Villain Guard was introduced in the Empty Child two-parter. We also get a reference to Fish Custard from 15, which I thought was lovely. The dialogue from Gatsworth, I think, is what just makes this performance, and he just sells it so well. That moment where he realizes that all of this is fake and that Ruby died for no reason, and he's trying to talk to her, but she's dead and not responding, and he's trying to keep it together. Like, the character and the emotional moments were so there. Like, that's what's been missing for me in Doctor Who over the last few years. That sense of, oh my god, these moments, I really care about these characters, they could genuinely die, anything could happen to them. That wasn't with me for the last few years, and it's back now. And that's a lovely feeling to have. But yeah, the story is like deceptively simple, and yet I can't help but love it for that. It didn't drag for me at all. It felt like the perfect length. Previously, I had said that pacing had been an issue for me in LTD episodes so far, particularly of season 1. This is not one of those cases. For me, everything felt like it was perfectly placed, had a good pacing, there was a nice build-up. It felt very classic Who, actually, which I guess makes sense given that the premise is basically an extended version of what happens in a single part of Genesis of the Daleks, but expanded into a 45-minute story with its own setting. And I think it just works brilliantly. I think it works absolutely fantastically. I can't praise this story enough. There's so many lines that were delivered that were just iconic to me, and I'm trying to like get everything in, get my thoughts all in, because I'm probably not going to be able to review this again, probably because of the nature of this channel. I don't tend to do more scripted reviews because I prefer to be quite off the cuff about things. The score of this was lovely. A lot of people say that Murray Gold's scores are too intrusive. I think this is a pretty good example of the opposite of that for me personally. For me, this was just right. It had moments of melancholy. It had moments of joy towards the end. The one other thing I will say that felt a bit tonally weird, actually, while we're there. So the Doctor resolves the plot. The villain guard programming is reset via the child, and everyone's happy. But the kid is still, the dad's still dead, and he sort of says, "Thanks to your father who art thou in heaven." And at that point, I don't think the kid's supposed to know that the dad's dead. So I thought, like, Doctor, read the room a little bit. The dad's still just died. I know that they say that, oh, well, you know, no one's ever really dead. They go to heaven and all that, which is nice, you know. And I thought, because I saw a lot of people, I saw reviews prior to this episode saying like, oh, this has some controversial religious elements in it. To me, I think it was perfectly even-handed. The Doctor doesn't really believe in it, but he respects it. He respects it in the context. I'm non-religious myself, but I thought it was lovely that, you know, even though he didn't believe it, which is my personal position, he always saw a place for it, and he saw the comfort that it brought that little girl and went, you do you. You do you. He's absolutely alive, of course he is. Kinda loved that. This just felt like Doctor Who to me, and I mean, the other two did as well, but I think the other two, particularly Devil's Court, whilst I love it and I enjoy it a lot, it feels like Doctor Who trying to do something different. This feels like Doctor Who distilled into its purest form. We have the Doctor companion get into a scrape, and they have to resolve it. And along the way, there's shock, there's tension. There's multiple points in this where, if it was paced like a classic Who story, you could very easily fit some cliffhangers in there. Like when Ruby dies, that felt tailor-made for an 80s style cliffhanger moment, you know, like a Trial of Time Lord style. I'm really curious to see what happens with Verada's character. I love this setting in general. So if Verada's character returns and is related to this character, I'd love to return to this setting, actually. I really quite enjoyed it. Maybe a version of Kastarion 3 that's basically been reformed, following them realizing that, yeah, there's no threat, and maybe they make a home out of it instead of, you know, trying to find things to fight. Either that, or they do like the long game approach where things get worse, they go back and it's even worse than it was before. Although, to be fair, I'm not sure how much worse it could get. That reaction, I haven't even spoken about Billy Gibson. Billy Gibson also gives a wonderful performance. It's hard to rank her because this, I felt, was very Shooty's episode. I remember people saying that this was more Ruby's episode, and while she does definitely step up, I loved the dynamic where the Doctor was saying, oh, just throw me the urn so I can counterbalance the bomb. And she was like, no, I'll just walk up to you. And she's like, well, you can't tell me what to do. And she walks up to him and gives it to him. That was a really nice moment for her, but I thought this was a Doctor showcase. That's not to say that Ruby wasn't great in it. There's a great moment where she first discovers that the urn is actually a human sort of repository, and she sort of looks at it, and when she tries to like throw it, she's like sort of picking at it. She doesn't want to touch it, which perfectly reasonable reaction, you know. But it also, like, what was great about this is that the comedy and the dialogue felt balanced with the emotion. The emotion of this episode, I cannot stress enough, really worked. I think it's something Russell. I'm too used to saying Russell. Russell's written too many. It's Moffat. Moffat is so good at just making you feel all the emotions, taking you on that emotional roller coaster. And I think this is a good case study of where less is more, personally. I loved this episode. I adored it. This might be my favourite of the era so far, including the 60th anniversary specials. I thought it was interesting, actually, that when the conflict's over, we get a reprise of, I think it's the end of the Star Beast, where the 14th Doctor investigates the TARDIS. I thought that was interesting. And we get another mention of the Doctor being a dad, which is the second time that's been mentioned on the trot, which I thought was quite interesting. So the more and more time's going on, the more I'm thinking, yeah, they are kind of teasing either something to do with Susan or something to do with his family to some degree. Because that's twice it's been brought up in a row, and even in Space Babies and Church on Ruby Road, he says, oh, I've got no one, So it feels very much like it's being built up. I think the idea of found family is very much something. I mean, that moment where Ruby dies, quote unquote, and then she says, I don't know who my next of kin is. Who is my next of kin? I don't know. And she's getting really emotional before, slowly her eyes begin to shut. Powerful stuff. As I said, both of them give wonderful performances. Millie is fantastic, but Ncuti, for me, this episode was really the one where he got to shine. And I think that's what I was looking for. Yeah. He absolutely smashed it. I realise I've been going on for quite a bit, but there's a lot to talk about, whilst it's all so simple. It's so difficult to really describe. I thought, set-wise, as in production, it looked fantastic. I thought the character of the Doctor felt really, really spot on. I really got a taste of who this incarnation was. I know I said in a previous video that the crying of the Doctor, that sounds like a Stephen Moffat title of itself, the crying of the Doctor. I remember saying that, that might feel a bit overbearing, but in this story particularly, it worked. I don't know whether we needed it in both of the previous stories, but in this story, it makes sense and it's justified. That moment where he's trying to keep his, he's trying to keep his heart rate down, and he sings a little song about the sky gods or whatever it is. Lovely, simple stuff. Again, it felt very Capaldi to me, which I liked, because Capaldi's Doctor dialogue is amazing. And Stephen, I know you said you're only coming back for Christmas, but you better come back for 2025, because if you've got stuff like this in you, I want you back. I know some people will say, we want new writers, but in my view, we can have both. If he's going to deliver stuff like this, I want more of it. I want more of it. Yeah, this was fantastic. I don't think it's going to be the most exciting episode for most people, but it's definitely the one that's made me go, oh yeah, Doctor Who is back. Do you know what I mean? This felt pitch perfect to me. But that's all I have to say. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give a like, comment down below your thoughts, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later. Goodbye, everyone.